Hey everybody, and welcome to the second video of Chapter 2. Now that we have set up our conversation about money and what it is, we are now going to talk about the modern payment system. And as an overview, we're first going to be talking about payments, and in particular, payments with fiat money in an illegal tender system. And then we're going to talk about technology and advances in the modern payment system. And then we're going to finally end on a pretty fun conversation about electronic money and, in particular, cryptocurrencies. So, first, as we have already mentioned, the Fed is the part of the US government who issues paper currency and legal tender. So they are in charge of issuing the amount of dollars available in the market. So when we look and compare at the roles of the Treasury and the Treasury does quality control basically. They're the ones that print the money, that make sure that money is in good condition and to discontinue any damaged bills, while the Fed is the part of the government that actually dictates the quantity available. Now, as one last wrap up on the fiat money conversation from last video, it is actually illegal for banks to issue their own currency. They are the one exception to the currency creation rule. And the reason for that is because of how critical the banking system is and its relationship with the Fed. They cannot just hijack the Fed's control and decide to de facto and create their own currency. So they are the only exception to the currency creation rules in the US. Now, something that is a bit maybe vague to some of you is the importance of checks. And for those of you that don't know, a check is not actually legal tender or even currency. It is just a promise to pay on demand the money deposited with a bank or another financial institution. So when, a family member writes you a check for $50 for your birthday, they aren't actually giving you $50. What that check actually is saying is that when you deposit the check, uh, that person who's writing you the check's bank account will give you $50. So it's actually has no legal tender whatsoever. It is just the promise of future legal tender. And as I mentioned, now in the modern payment system, checks are electronically settled, but that wasn't always easily the case. But they are actually decreasing the need for currency to be held at all. And so, with the growth of checks and then other systems that I'm going to be talking about shortly, we actually see a dramatic decrease in the amount of physical bills and coins in the US economy. And with that, since they are not in circulation, having access to quick liquidity and solvency is increasingly important so that people just aren't insolvent and unable to pay off any debts. Now, technology does have a very important role in the payment system, and there are a lot of very intelligent people, much smarter than me, who are looking at ways to speed up the payment system in the US economy. And the Fed has given out a few directives on any developments in payment system to meet these five features. First, they want it to have a increased speed, it to be very quick. Two, that it's secure so that people can't, hijack the payment system and steal everybody's money. Third, that it's efficient, that it's not clunky and difficult to access. Fourth is that it's easy to create international transactions. And this is a big one because there's no centralized system between governments from different countries using different currencies. So any sort of payment system can make massive inroads by smoothing out international transaction times and costs and security. And then finally, and this kind of goes hands in hand with it, is that it links different participants in the financial system together, that it's not only accessible to a select few or interpretable to a select few. And so let's look at a couple examples of new that in terms of the greater financial system and how that they improved our ability to make payments. And the first one are debit cards and payment apps. And so what a debit card does instead of a check is it instantly links payments to a bank account. So when I use my debit card at Target for $50, it is immediately taking $50 out of my bank account and giving it to Target, as opposed to a check where it would be me promising you or target $50 at a future date. As you may imagine, this makes sellers extremely happy and has really started to phase out the need and usefulness of checks in the commercial marketplace. And this is because a lot of sellers had massive trust issues with overdraft problems where people were writing checks that they couldn't pay for. And debit cards don't run into that issue because a debit card, unless we can get into nuances here, but generally speaking, the company, in this case Target, immediately gets that $50. They don't have to have some sort of future trust. Additionally, automated clearinghouse transactions have a massive increased role in the modern US economy. And these are who, whenever you get direct deposits from Purdue or whoever your employer may be, they all go through automated clearinghouse transactions. And what they do with these ACHs is that they just make everything digital, centralized, and even automatic. So instead of somebody in the business office at Purdue writing a check for me every 2 weeks, they have just typed in to their clearinghouse every 2 weeks, give me my salary. And every 2 weeks, Purdue does so without a problem, without any sort of transaction cost, or without a time lag. Now, we have seen a huge surge in e-money, so it's time for e-money and in particular cryptocurrency to start to have a conversation in a money and banking class. So e-money is just any sort of money that is digital, that is not linked to some sort of physical, tender. So the very first e-money source was actually PayPal. And PayPal was developed, believe it or not, at the end of the 20th century in 1997, and was the first to have direct electronic deposits to different people. And then Venmo created a huge surge forward to decrease transaction costs because Venmo was a peer-to-peer payment system where there's no third-party financial directory to link or clear the payments that are going through the Venmo system. And as I may have mentioned before, Venmo is actually now part of PayPal, so it's really centralizing these two different programs even further. But we are now having this large discussion in the media about cryptocurrency. So it is worth talking about what cryptocurrency is, how it's different from other types of currency, and also how it's different from e-money. And the big question that we're going to be trying to answer through this discussion is actually pretty simple. Is cryptocurrency money? So, for those of you that don't know, cryptocurrency is a digital asset. One coin in any cryptocurrency is just a string of code. And the way that you trade cryptocurrency is by giving your string of code to somebody else. And the way that you do that is through what is called blockchain technology. And a blockchain, all that it is a digital ledger. So, since, as I mentioned, a coin in cryptocurrency is just a string of code, it's very difficult to say that you can't use the same string of code and give it to multiple people. However, with the creation of blockchain, that is impossible to do because this digital ledger now records that you no longer have possession of that string of code. It is now the person that you paid it with. And the reason why we talk about Bitcoin so much, beyond the fact that it's surging and crashing and all this, is that it was the very first cryptocurrency. So it predates, Doge and Ethereum and all these other cryptocurrencies. And so that's why people are so intently interested in whether Bitcoin will become a money or not and what its role will be in the future. And there are some pros and cons to cryptocurrency. The first one is that it actually is extremely secure. Blockchain technology is very sophisticated, as well as these strings of code are nearly impossible to crack. So it's impossible to replicate a cryptocurrency coin, and it's impossible or nearly impossible to hack into a digital ledger to steal people's cryptocurrency. Additionally, transaction costs are reduced substantially. So it is 3% of all transaction costs for people to use credit cards, which is why a lot of, especially small businesses urge you to pay in cash so that they can avoid those transaction costs. However, with cryptocurrency, it's closer to 1%. Additionally, from a consumer end of things, they eliminate the need for a physical wallet. All that you need is your digital wallet, which for people that do have cryptocurrency can be on your phone and etc. However, there are some cons to cryptocurrencies as well. The biggest one is that they're slow. Cryptocurrencies, uh, to go through the blockchain, it actually can take up to 15 minutes. And so if you want to pay at Target with Bitcoin, you may end up in the checkout line waiting there for 15 minutes. So the development of blockchain needs to improve before cryptocurrency is used as common tender in businesses across America or the globe. Additionally, as I mentioned, partially because it's so slow, is that it's not commonly accepted yet. And there's a lot of variety of reasons for this, but right now, cryptocurrencies are more just a storage of wealth rather than a currency that people trade with each other rather than using as a money to exchange for a good or service. And that's really what separates cryptocurrencies from actual, well, I shouldn't say actual, but from what we right now define as money, because it is not used to exchange goods and services. Then finally, one of the biggest barriers to making it a type of money is that it is decentralized, making it extremely volatile. 2 days ago, the value of Bitcoin dropped by 20%. And you don't want to wake up at 8 a.m. and say that you're going to pay your rent, in the evening, and then when you do in the evening, find out that the amount of cryptocurrency of Bitcoin or whatever that you have has dropped by 20%. So you have to give your landlord 20% more Bitcoins than you would have in the morning. And so people are a bit leery because of this volatility in the cryptocurrency market that comes from it being decentralized. It's not controlled by the Fed or any sort of central government. So that concludes this video. If you have any questions about cryptocurrency, this will not be the last time that we talk about it in this class, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time that you talk about it in your everyday life.